Howdy doody. Happy Tap Talk Wednesday. Hope you are enjoying the evening. It's a lovely August day, and we're into a stretch of just some of the nicest weather of the whole summer, I think. So, happy Tap Talk. I hope that you found something tasty that you've got to enjoy while we explore a few things on tap and even talk a little bit about our tap system today. So yeah, that's what's on my brain at the moment. Just enjoying a beverage here, and so yeah, we just wanted to kick it with you for a few minutes. Our little 8 o'clock hangout remotely. So let's see, what do we got coming up? Tomorrow we'll have the Cobble House food truck here for Thirsty Thursday. So that should be a good time, and some fun and delicious beers to enjoy for that. And tasty, savory things. One moment. The beauties of doing live stuff is occasionally you get unexpected visitors. Yes, nothing to be concerned about. So, just the landlord checking in, making sure we're all good. All right, so I found myself a beer. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to tell you about it. So this one's kind of a fun and funky, interesting beer. This one comes from Three Sheeps. We've been on a real good run with them lately. We had the tasting recently, and they just make some killer beers. So, you know, generally they've kind of fallen into the category of breweries that are, kind of entering that sort of can't miss spectrum. So beers that, generally speaking, if you see something new coming from them, it's like, get it, it's going to be good. This one, stepping out a little bit more into unfamiliar territory, but very interesting and tasty. This one is the Coffee Nebula. So strangely enough, this was going to be the beer that we were going to feature at our tasting a few weeks ago, but it just was not quite ready. It just, sometimes that's the beauty and the challenge of dealing with some of these beers, is that they they're a natural process, and as much control as the brewers have over everything, sometimes part of the art of brewing is waiting until something is properly ready before serving it, which is the mark of a good brewer and a good brewery, of recognizing that maybe means missing out on a few profits or jumping the gun on something, or maybe not being on the very bleeding edge, but making sure you get it right. And so respect to them for that. So this was made in collaboration with a Brazilian brewery. I'm pretty certain on that one. I know there's a connection with Brazil. I think it's at the brewery there, and or maybe it's the roastery. But anyway, they've made a delicious hazy IPA, which is nice and fragrant and citrusy, but then has the added benefit of having a nice light roast coffee in it also, which adds an interesting layer. So up front, you get coffee in there a bit, but it's kind of in the background, and you get that nice kind of like lightly kind of zested citrus kind of lemon thing going on. Yeah, and then on the palate, tastes mostly like an IPA, but you get definitely a wisp of coffee in there. So I think it's very well balanced. I think it's one of those beers that sort of messes with your brain a little bit, because we associate coffee with dark things, dark colored things, and this is most certainly not dark. The Duluth Coffee Pale Ale comes to mind for another beer that's sort of mind-bending in the coffee golden spectrum. Tell me about an interesting beer. Shout it out in the comments of something that you've had that was like totally kind of blew your mind and freaked you out a little bit. Doesn't have to be the whole dark tasting light beer. It could just be something that you had it and you're just like, wow, that was just crazy. It sort of made you just question what you were tasting. Oh, there we go. Xylus chiming in. Now we know. It's always like, who's Muddy Waters that's been cheering us on all this time. We got a chance to chat and hang out with Xylus last week, so cheers, buddy. All right, so this is kind of one of my favorite new things from the last week, the Three Sheeps Coffee Nebula. We only have a small quantity of it, so I don't expect it to last terribly long, but if it's piquing your interest, you should definitely give it a whirl. Fun and interesting beer. All right, I now have, okay, so I'm gonna do this one. We're gonna talk about this beer, and then we're gonna do a little behind the scenes. So, this beer falls into a category of beers that I think I like to try to keep at least one on at all times, of what I consider to be a Sara Lee beer. And what I mean by that is it's a beer that nobody wouldn't like, because nobody doesn't like Sara Lee, right? So if you are able to tolerate beer at any level, I think this is a beer that that you will find enjoyment in. It's simple but tasty and refined, but just like very approachable. I bet you want to know what it is, don't you? Maybe I'll just do that. I'll start describing these beers and be like, oh, they're all really good, but what is it? Come on, tell us. This one is Schell's Cream Ale. All right, so I see Silas got in there. Dogfish Head, Pennsylvania Tuxedo. I remember that beer coming out. Maple syrup in there, if I remember right, I think. Yeah, I remember that being kind of a crazy beer, which fits with Dogfish Head. They make a lot of really interesting, crazy beers. It's sort of what their whole brand is built on. So this one, Schell's Cream Ale, is from the August Schell Brewing Company in New Ulm, Minnesota, one of the oldest breweries still running in the country, and the second oldest family-owned brewery in the U.S. They survived Prohibition and warfare in their area during the Native American Wars in that area, and Spruce IPA from Dogfish, and are still making wonderful beer. And they've kind of taken a beer. The cream ale style is kind of designed to be a golden ale. It's quicker and easier to produce than a lager, but that mimics some of the similar characteristics of an easy drinking lighter lager. So again, Sara Lee beer. It's just super crushable, which I almost hate to even say because it seems like super played out, but it's just a very easy to drink beer that has good flavor to it. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you want pretty much with most of your beers, is something that is, we can have the complex and the interesting, but it's good to balance it out with sometimes things that are just a good drinking beer, as I like to call them. So with that, this is a classic, now year-round beer from Schell's, at least a couple of years, 2-3 years old now. And so it gives you a good opportunity to get to know the Schell's brand if you're not familiar with them. And with that, we're going to take a little tour since I've got something to enjoy. So let's spin you around. First of all, we're going to take a look at the list here. So here is our taps currently. We've got one down right now because we're waiting on a beer tomorrow. But you can see taps are mounted on a board onto our cooler. And why the board? It is part decorative. It is also part functional, but because of the nature of our taps, they're a little too close to the tap system, mounting them directly through the wall. So we needed a little bit of a buffer so they don't bump into the wall. And some of the bigger ones still do. And then the beer goes down into the drain, to the drip tray, as well as our glass rinser, which we've talked about in the past for making sure the beers pour with a nice even head of foam on them. And that beer comes from right around here at the corner, our beer cooler. So this is where all of our tap lines, this is a direct draw system. I'll explain it a little bit more when I get out of there, but I want to show you a little bit of behind the scenes. All different size kegs, half barrels down here, it's 15.5 gallons. Sixth barrel, about 5.17 gallons. Quarter barrel, 7.75 gallons. Let's see, what else do we have back here? I don't have any crazy European style ones. Ooh, back there, there's a crazy 30 liter keg. There's a 20 liter European style. Different, you can see the different coupling mechanisms there. got our cold brew coffee, our different gas tanks, our nitrogen and CO2. Got our kombucha soda keg here. And then all these tap lines go directly through the wall. Got them all numbered with their own little independent pressure gauges. So that's the gist of how the system looks. So it's constantly in evolution there with all the different beers and kegs that we have. At any given point, we probably have just about, I think recently I had just about every single keg size represented back there. What's the Petrus one? Wow, you're just gonna have to wait and find out. We'll have that one on soon. It's a bit sour, I'll tell you that much. Oh, and I saw a question here. Let me scroll up. Charlie, cream ales don't have lactose. True. Although I think at this point now you can find some cream ales that are probably made with lactose out in the marketplace now, just because it seems like lactose is just about everywhere and everything. But no, traditionally not. Cream ale is just a reference to the golden, kind of the golden color, light-bodied nature of the beer. So yes, our tap system is a direct draw, meaning that you can see the kegs, the beer just goes directly through the wall and goes right to our faucets. So they're short, very short line. It's the most efficient way to pour beer, other than like a keg cooler that just comes right up through a tower. But yes, this is about as easy as it gets, much simpler than our old system, which was a short draw, meaning that it came through the wall and then ran through. Ours was a very custom, tedious, somewhat maintenance nightmare of a system, where it ran through insulated piping with cold air blowing across it, and temperature regulation can be very difficult, which means that beer pouring with the foam in the beer can be very difficult. The key to a good draft system is maintaining balance of the pressure of CO2 and the temperature of the beer, so that way you're matching the pressure being pushed by the gas. So when you open the faucet, the gas is replacing the CO2 that's already in the keg at hopefully the same pressure, so that way it pours nicely with the CO2 not getting either too much in the beer, causing it to come out of the faucet too quickly, or sometimes the same thing can happen too if you under pressurize the beer, or if the temperature is a little bit off. It can be very fickle, and the longer the draw, the longer the distance between where your faucets, where the beer comes out, and where the beer is stored, the more difficult and the more expensive and the more tedious they are to install, upkeep, maintain, and just generally keep in good working order. So any big bar system that you see at like a major restaurant often will have like long draw systems. Not exclusively the case, but a lot of times, and they require a lot of maintenance. So this is a very simplified system that we did on purpose, built our whole bar right around the cooler. So we tried to make it easy on ourselves. So on that note, cheers, Shell's Cream Ale. I am by no means a draft expert, but I have learned quite a bit about dealing with them, mostly through trial and error, with a lot of error involved. It seems to be the only way to really learn how to do something well is to fail at it, or to not do a great job at it for a while until you figure out how to make it work properly. And we have poured quite a few beers here over the years, and sometimes they're just a dream and sometimes they're a nightmare. Largely now things pour pretty nicely for us. We've gotten everything pretty well dialed in, but there's always some fun thing, like dropping a keg recently in the back, which in the summer we're waiting on a few deliveries to come through, and that cooler can get pretty jam-packed. It's pretty light in there at the moment, and keg gymnastics can get pretty interesting. Yeah, I'm glad sometimes there's no one back there to watch some of the shenanigans going on. Okay, I've got one more quick beer here, and then one final one. We're gonna run a little bit long. Another classic year-round beer. I really enjoy doing this as part of our tap lineup of representing the new coolness, like the Three Sheeps Coffee Nebula, super limited one-off thing. You know, I gotta have some of those things because that just keeps it interesting. But then balancing that with year-round beers you can find anytime that maybe you just don't see on tap a lot of places. So this one's the Bent Paddle Black Ale. not the cold pressed black, not the double shot, double black, just the plain old black ale. And it's just a darn nice beer. You can see why they might call it the black ale. That's what color the beer is. And it's nice and roasty and chocolatey. It smells like a dark beer should. And doggone it if it doesn't taste like a dark beer should as well. Nice and roasty, but very balanced. And just, I don't know, a really nice beer. Again, a good beer for drinking. So, this one, I feel like kind of sometimes these year-round beers, often amongst all the new stuff constantly being released, these are the things that you drink that keep breweries alive, buying a 6-pack at a time, having these staple beers that are just well made, well balanced, not necessarily real flashy or crazy, interesting per se. Not saying that this isn't an interesting beer, but it's just a nice black ale. Doesn't have to be a whole lot more than that. It's just very good to drink. So it's just really nice. So if you like a dark beer, or maybe you're unsure if you like a dark beer and want to try, this is a pretty approachable one. It's not very strong. It does have a roastiness, but it's not super bitter. So very nice. All right, and then the last beer here is a new one from one of our favorite breweries, Jolly Pumpkin from Michigan. This is I'm gonna take a stab at it and call it, or what I've been calling it, is the Hirokin. Although we've had mentioned that it reminds us of Street Fighter. If you grew up in the 90s going to arcades and playing the Street Fighter arcade game, the Hadouken, that maneuver, it makes me think of that. But this is a Saison Belgian-style golden ale aged in oak barrels with blood orange and ginger. So let's drink some of that because it's real yummy. You have to like a little bit of a sour beer. It's a little bit earthy, a little bit funky, but you can see it's generally a pretty mild color. It's not a very strong beer. It's only 4.5%. But just a really nice summer beer. So it's got a tartness. It's got a tangy, kind of earthy character. But the orange and the ginger are both very present without being over the top. Ginger is one of those flavors that like a very little bit goes a long way. And this one, it's definitely there, but it's not that spicy, like kind of burn your tongue ginger character. It's just, I think, adds to the refreshingness of the beer. Refreshingness, that's a word now. Why not? That's what you get with live stuff here, all right? So, refreshingness. That's the theme of tonight's Tap Talk. So it just got the classic Jolly Pumpkin, like, house character, I would say, which is like the coolest house character to have, that your beers have this like earthy barrel-aged sour quality. But it is, that kind of floats in the background of the Saison. It's still a Belgian Saison. It's still that kind of earthy, spicy, peppery blonde ale. But then with that barrel aging character, I just think it's so cool what they do, and I've always been a big fan of what they've made, and I'm glad that we can still get their stuff here. I was able to sell their beers in the Twin Cities, and so I've always been excited that we could get them up here, and pretty much their mainstay of our retail to-go beer fridge. So we got cans of this right now, and it's really tasty. All right. I think that wraps it up for our topics for the evening. So tomorrow night, swing on by for the Cobble House food truck and Thirsty Thursday. We will be announcing ticket sales for our August 31st beer dinner. We'll be announcing them later this week. They will go on sale next week. So stay tuned if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram. If you get our email newsletter, check that. That's where you'll find out about the details for the upcoming beer dinner. And then, if you're paying real close attention and want to know, this Saturday we will be closing at noon because Ashley and I, along with several of our other friends from the Hayward area, will be participating in the Ragnar Relay, which is a running relay from Minneapolis to Duluth. And so we'll take turns running with a whole group of other kind of crazy folks, having a real fun time doing that. The crew will be here rocking it, taking care of the shop Friday and Saturday, but Saturday will just be until noon. That is the only modification for hours for this week, but we will not see you Saturday afternoon. So if you've got to get in, get some beers, or get your punk fix, make sure to plan accordingly and do it by noon on Saturday. And then as a result, because our legs, and apparently my voice is just cracking before the weekend even gets here, there will be no Sunday Run Day Fun Day this Sunday, just due to the fact that we will have done a whole bunch of running the days leading up to it. But then coming up at the end of the month, we'll be doing a mini Ragnar relay here from the Whistle Punk, which will consist of roughly like 2-mile loops. So you get a team of 4 to go do that, and that will be super cool. I'm really looking forward to that. So I hope you enjoy your Wednesday evening. One last toast with the Roken. It's good stuff. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great week, and we will see you next week. All right. Cheers.